Hey guys, how's it going? February 18th, 2020. And we're on once again. So, I tried replying actually. It was raining today, so I actually tried getting around. I didn't want it. It was a nice day actually, but everything was melting, so. My shoes aren't that good for walking outside these days and on the slush, that's for sure. But, anyways, that was kind of weird. I should be at least one concurrent viewer. I've never seen it do that before. Oh well. I'll assume I'm still going because it says I'm live, so. That was strange. Oh well, we'll let it go. It says the bit rate's low, blah 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 blah. Who knows with this internet of mine? I really don't know. It was kind of weird because I had concurrent viewers, which usually is me, and it's showing none. I've never seen it happen like that before. That is bizarre. Just give me a second here. Just want to make sure everything is going. Yeah. It says I'm streaming, so I'll assume I'm streaming until something tells me I'm not. The way the internet is, you never know. But anyways, now it's up to one concurrent viewer, so that's better. Okay, assuming everything's going, let's forget about the weather and all that other crap. Yeah, I took it today. Decided to go down to the forum. Tried to post a long reply to some of the messages that were coming in. Whether it's pro TSW or anti TSW, blah blah blah. First of all, let me just, for the record, I want TSW to succeed just like I want Run 8 to succeed. I would like to see all these simulators get better. But as far as Run 8 has given me plenty of substance and has actually exceeded my expectations many of times. So the fact that Run 8 has exceeded my expectations already puts it very high on my list as something that in the past I have been pleasantly surprised with. So if anything is going to get my attention or get me back into the swing of things, it would be Run 8. Run 8 is still my go-to simulator. There is nothing else out there that I have know of that can match what it can do for my own personal interests. That being said, it's run its course. And what ends up happening is when something like this comes around, it really makes me wonder, well, what if? And this was what the what if started happening on Sunday night. What if this was out for Run 8? What if, somebody was able to develop it? What if I was able to develop it? What if? Then suddenly, it's a whole game changer. Because that was exactly the type of route that I would have loved to see in Run 8. And you could say, well, yeah, you can split up this route and you can do this and that. You're still dealing with 3 regions that anybody who plays multiplayer is going to, for the most part, want the biggest routes. They want the biggest... Most people want the biggest areas. And if you look back at Run 8, between version 1 and version 2, version 1 and version 2 was night and day. Yet version 1, for the longest time, was probably one of the strongest eras for myself in RTS. I had my server the majority of version 1. I was able to do quite a bit more to some extent, but we never got spoiled by what version 2 was capable of bringing. Once version 2 hit, first and foremost, most people who could only rely on servers to see the traffic that they wanted to see no longer had to rely on servers. They were able to generate the traffic that they wanted, and for many actually, all they care about is seeing is some animated train going by. It's kind of like traffic, AI traffic. There's like a big deal about, people making big deals about AI traffic and running through gates and all this other crap. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I know that's not realistic, but it's a simulator. It's no big deal for me. I'm not. It's not a car simulator like John said at one time. So I found that more people are into these long routes, and they want more. They want these regions to expand. The majority of the people want them to expand. The problem with that is the smaller servers don't stand a chance. They cannot compete. They cannot. Even the bigger. I've said this before. Even the biggest servers cannot possibly do it as real as it gets, because it's a farce. It's not as real as it gets. The train might be as real as it gets, but the railroad and the operations you're running on, there's no way you can do a 24/7 timetable. That's one thing TSW apparently is trying to do. And I like some of the directions they are going. Believe it or not. I've looked into it. Now, I'm not convinced TSW's for me. At least not right now. It is, until I see some videos that are showing. And I looked up this guy, I forget his name, whatever his name was mentioned, whoever he is. He, to me, at least from what I could tell, he looked like he was some kind of, he didn't look like a developer, he looked like he was a fan. So I did a search on YouTube, and I found him, and sure enough, he was doing TSW videos. He had a British accent, and all I saw was him doing run-throughs of, he wasn't saying anything that I saw. That doesn't mean I couldn't find the video. So if there's a live stream, or if there's a YouTube video where he spills all the beans, please send me a link. Send me a link onto the forum. I'd be happy on those nights where I'm looking for entertainment, where I'm bored out of my mind. I'd be happy to hear what his vision is, or what he sees coming, or some of the secret things that people don't realize they can do in Run 8. Or sorry, not Run 8, TSW. I have seen videos as well where people actually don't go with what the scheduled systems are, and they just take cars and they do originally I did a search for, I think it was on, if it wasn't Sunday, it was Monday, free roam or free play, NYC, or NEC, Northeast Corridor free play, I think I did. And it was an interesting one, because what they were doing was, there was a warning up on the upper left-hand corner that kept on saying this something about the service is scheduled for 17:30, but yet he was moving them. He was taking whatever engine he could find. He would move the cars, and sure enough, he would go through, and by the time he got back, there was another AI train that sure enough brought cars back in. Probably the same exact ones, more than likely, from what I understand how TSW works, but it's something. And even when you bring in the same type of cars, One thing I've been with Run 8 is I've in order to expand it and try to stretch Run 8 out as much as I possibly can, is I get very creative with Run 8. So I find creative ways of making it work. One of the things that I immediately, from what I understood of TSW and from what everything is being told to me, the harbor area, if it is done well, will give you plenty of open switching where you do not have to worry about crossing a signal, as far as I know. Doesn't guarantee it, but it is possible. There's one switch that comes out of Hamilton that is beyond a control point. I don't know how it acts if you go through a red signal, but it is, if it's normally lined up for the harbor, you can go straight through without interacting with the main line. You would just have to go through a red signal. As far as I know, back in the Microsoft Train Simulator days, you couldn't do that. It was over as soon as you did that. But who knows? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not too sure about what the rules are when it comes to that 24/7 schedule. And I think it's the 24/7 career type schedule where you would have to do things. I don't know if everything ends after 24 hours or if it just repeats. That's the other thing I'm not too sure about. Does it repeat after 24 hours? So I still have a lot of questions and a lot of learning to do as far as what TSW can. But what I'm finding, at least most information tells me that at least in its current form, TSW would not. It might get me some entertainment for a little while, but once I do all those activities and those routes, and then I go through some of the 24/7 stuff, and or the 24-hour things, or whatever the heck that they call those things. And once I go through those things, once I've done it once, I don't need to do it a second time. But at least it's something. So, when I talked about, like, as far as the title on this here, I don't know if I can get that or not. Probably not. Well, let me just see. Yeah. So basically, what I wrote here is, so here I am full circle. At the time, it feels like I'm spinning my wheels, but every time I try, no matter how many times I fail, I either find out what works, what doesn't, and slowly progress forward. I've been criticized. I can't tell you how many people probably have gone from my forums. They got tired of me trying something and giving up, trying something and giving up. The reason why I give up on certain things is not because I'm a quitter. It's because I try something that just does not feel like it's doing what I wanted it to do. So I try something else and it fails. And I try something else and it fails. If Run 8 had the mechanism to, as is, to be able to give me everything that I want, or at least the majority of the things that I want, I wouldn't be shutting down all the time. That's something I didn't do in the first few years of Run 8, because I had a server, and yeah, sometimes it was tough because, I didn't get as many people, and it was tough to get traffic moving and all that other stuff, but we still had a common purpose. There was a good following, a good loyal following, and things went relatively smooth. And even at the beginning of version 2, there was a lot of enthusiasm. There was a lot of potential. But, eventually that fizzled out. And I've heard through the grapevine that the big servers are not doing as well. I don't know how true it is, and I really don't care how well they're doing. It doesn't really matter. What I'd like to see is Run 8 be able to succeed and find whatever works for them. Obviously, they're going to run into issues. They're not always going to hit a home run, and they're going to come across times where they're just They're going to run into these issues with suddenly all of a sudden they got let's say for example, and I mean this is just hypothetically speaking or hypothesis or whatever you want to call it, but let's just say the game engine that they're running right now is not powerful enough. It's common theory that's been thrown around by some. I've heard it. Uh, I actually believe that that could be the case. I believe that their game engine is probably pushed to their limit, and that's where I feel that there's an issue there because if they can't, if it's, I don't know, there could be there could be a lot of things. There could be personal issues. There could be resource issues. There could be all kinds of things that are preventing them to do. They're trying to do so much, and they've only been in the desert for the longest time. They started expanding into the cities. The routes are getting longer and longer. The yards are trying to get bigger and bigger, and it's well known that the more industries that you have on a system, it starts taxing the resources. I didn't realize how much that did tax until I was somebody actually Smiley actually told me. He said the reason why he doesn't use dummy tracks is because he's got an older system, and the more industries he puts in, the slower it runs. And I thought, oh wow, I didn't realize that it did that. I understood I could understand the hump. The hump made sense. Waycross not working as well. That's probably the reason why I had issues at Waycross where others didn't. Was because I had every single bull track laid out. I had every single bull track reporting. And that took a long time to do. And when things started not working, I push Run 8 to its limits. I really do. I always have, because not because I want to see it crash, but I want to get the most out of it. And yeah, Waycross was giving me issues, but they don't seem to be common issues because I don't see any bug fixes being changed in there, and it could just well be my rig too. It just I may not have enough. Maybe my system's too old to run it. I have no idea, but I noticed that it starts failing. So that's just the way it is. But it's a big bowl. It's the only one that's ever attempted to do it. Maybe I have too many cars in the bowl. There was warnings about having too many cars in the bowl. Maybe there's too much emphasis on the graphics card. But what the issues that are coming are probably processing related and memory related, because what you're having too many AI operations going on at once, which is another reason why I think the AI settings were much lower at one time until they increased it. But no, I'm not going to get another PC. I have no reason to get another PC. The only way I'm going to get another PC is if something's out there that actually is worthy of a PC. I don't need to. I don't need to spend money on a computer or add video cards just for to be ready for something that comes. Um, and even if let's just say Waycross was working for me, that doesn't solve anything. That having Waycross work for me, or having anything work for me, I need something that works for me before I need to worry about having it work, if that makes sense. So no, I'm not upgrading my PC. The only time I'll upgrade my PC and video card is if I decide to go to TSW, and TSW can do the things that some are saying are possible. And we'll wait and see. I got plenty of time for that. So the videos, we'll see if the what's on these videos when they come out, or what live streams are available. But I have made some interesting development tonight, actually, with Blender, and that was something for a while there that I don't know. It's kind of weird because it was the same guy I subscribed to, but I guess it probably wasn't as basic as I needed it, and I went into Blender and it overwhelmed me. There were so many little things to do, and that there's so many different parts of it. And then there was a very easy tutorial that went in there that just started you off, and starts very slowly. It starts with just basically creating a scene with a donut. Sean Spalding's the guy's name. I think it's no, not Sean Spalding. I'm getting him confused with somebody else. Never mind. Forget I said Sean Spalding. This is the Blender Guru. I think it is. I subscribe to, but I think that's his name. But anyways, they got some interesting stuff in there that is catching my eye all of a sudden, where I may just take a shot at it. If I can get Blender working, and there's also I was checking the Unreal. This another one I subscribe to is Unreal Engine 4. So I have Unreal Engine 4. I have no problem farting around with Unreal Engine 4. There's a steep learning curve, but if I can make slow progress, I may be willing to try some things in it. And as long as I'm got the ball moving, and I think I'm headed in the right direction, then there's a few ideas that I have on the back burner. As long as I'm making progress, like I said, if I'm spinning my wheels and I fail here and I have to restart, or this didn't work and I have to try a different way, that's fine, as long as I am trying something. What I don't want to do is get into a situation where, and this is where I found that I've been getting into lately, is where I just don't do anything. I end up going on YouTube and watch some meaningless videos, or go to bed early or fall asleep on the couch. That started happening, and I was just like, okay. This time used to be so active for me. I used to be able to get my Run 8 fix in. I used to be able to be on servers. I used to be able to have all these things that would keep my interest on times. 3 months from now is going to be a very testing time for me, which is why I'm giving myself 3 months, because in 3 months we're going to be getting close to summer. And yeah, I'm going to go away on a vacation, but when I come back, I got 2 weeks. That's just going to be me and work. And, I work, but I don't work that much. So I'm going to have all the evenings to myself. I'm not going to be seeing my son for 2 weeks. The weekends, I'm going to have to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. I don't exactly have a huge pool of friends to count on. Yes, I can drive. Yes, I can take some rail fan trips on my own. I've done it before on my own. It's not a big deal if it gets my mind off of things, and then so be it. But there's going to be plenty of time that I'm going to have to fill in. And I don't drink coffee. I don't drink pop anymore either. I gave that up at the end of last year because of sleep issues. So No, I don't. I don't. It's got nothing to do with staying up. It's called being bored. But if I'm active, I'm not going to fall asleep. If I'm into something, I'm not going to fall asleep. So sitting there watching YouTube that I really don't care about is not how I want to spend my evenings or hobbies or whatever. That's what sleep's for. That's why my sleep patterns have been pretty good lately. So I want to keep it that way. But I have a TCS monitor. If you check my channel, I've done things in ATCS monitor. I have ATCS monitor in this area. Yeah, that's boring. Done that. But that's just boring. It's not like there's ATCS monitor there. No. Anyways, enough. I'm gonna stop answering those questions because you're going all over the place here. I just want to keep on my train of thought. I was gonna disable chat tonight. No offense, but just so I can. But yeah. So, anyways, but yeah, it's I know I have these live chats, but yeah, Blender's a graphics program. It's a three D it's a free 3D design software. So that's where if I wanna push the 3D world, I don't have any any artist skill. I'm not very artsy or anything like that, but when it comes to geometric shapes and stuff like that, freight cars, that's pretty simple. Panels, 3D panels, if I want to go that way, stuff like that. So I mean, all those things they'll be fine. If I want to go those roads, I'll be fine with those. If I want to do some of the simple polygons and stuff like that. When we're getting into trees and forests and stuff like that, buildings are pretty easy too. I mean, I would imagine from the outside looking in, I mean, they can't be that difficult. And even if it looks like crap, at least it's something. That's the way I look at it. I can always improve it later. So if I'm creating an asset that's not that great, at least it's something. Eventually it's going to come down to the programming. But my whole train of thought when it comes to what I decide to do with my time, it's really simple. A couple days ago, I got down. I actually was at work on Monday, or sorry, yesterday I guess it was. So I was at work earlier in the day, and I said to myself, you know, I think when I get home tonight, I'm going to just start programming in just basic again, and I'm just going to do a 2D yard simulator. I'm not going to worry about backgrounds. I'm just going to do totally some of my ideas in 2D and just start doing it. And I procrastinated, and boom, I was out of it. What I don't procrastinate on is firing up Run 8 if I have an idea, because Run 8, I'm very comfortable and confident in manipulating it to do what I want. Blender's a pain in the ass. It's not fun for me. It's got its own steep little learning curve, but at least I'm starting to understand the basics. So hopefully, I sent Scott a email too because he's more artistic than I am. So I'm kind of hoping to get somebody to do my assets, and then I can just deal with the coding. That'd be nice. But I got a funny feeling, I'm gonna end up doing that, and who knows, my son might catch on to it as well because we're kind of doing it together. So at least right now we are. So We're going to try a few things. If I learn a few things on my own, that's fine. Then I can show him what I've learned. And if it catches on with him and he seems to get the bug and he's into it, then perhaps that's something that he'll like to do. He loves video games, so, and he's also very interested in getting a better train simulator. He's very interested in that. He was very curious about Train Sim World as well. So that's something I keep an open mind for. I'm certainly open. I'm open for Train Sim World. If for whatever reason Train Sim World surprises me and sure enough is on the cutting edge of some major changes, well, then I'm going to change my attitude about that. Then that's when I will look at getting a better video card. That's when I'm going to look at getting a different PC. Getting a different PC is probably something I don't want to do. I would much rather just upgrade a video card, upgrade whatever. But I'm only going to do that when I need to do it. I'm not going to do it ahead of time because personally, I would much rather keep everything the way it is. I have everything that works for me right now. It works well enough for me. Everything is there that I need to do what I need to do. So I don't need anything else right now. It runs everything. I was running Kerbal Space Program with my son tonight. It runs fine. We have no issues with it. So hello. But so we have no issues with it whatsoever. There's a lot of programs we have no issues with. Run 8, I have very little issues with. I run lower frames, but I don't mind. It's perfectly acceptable to me. I'll run 30 or I'll even run 20. I have no problem with running a steady 20. But I'm not worried about that. So, as I was saying though, as far as how my decision process goes, I'll procrastinate very easily away from something that I'm not comfortable with or I lack the confidence. And it's not that I don't have the confidence in programming. I have the confidence in programming. The problem is I'm seriously outdated. My programming comes from a data basis, or Commodore 64 is probably the easiest basic programming that there was. You could program games in Commodore 64 Basic very easily. There was commands in there that allowed you to play with different parts of memory. It allowed you to execute various functions with poke commands and peek commands. There's all kinds of things that you could manipulate in a Commodore 64 to get it to do. Random number generation, file storage, even going so far as communication via modem. Back in the day, some of the various early networks, I actually wrote in assembly, Commodore 64 assembly language. One of the last programs I wrote was in assembly. That was part of a network, a bulletin board system network. So that was my first jaunt into network communications. It was really my only one. But so I'm in no hurry to learn what multiplayer is going to be like. I can't even figure out or even get a discriminator. Not the discriminator. What am I talking about? I'm thinking ATCS now. I can't get the what do you call that? I don't know if it's the current. I forget which one it is. It is. It's basically part of the stack that deals with communications over networks, so that they talk to each other. And that's something you need as far as communicating between one program to another. So, for example, you've got the what is it? What do you call it? External dispatcher protocol. So, external dispatcher basically opens up a port. It communicates, sends data to it, and to be able to get that data, not only just to get the data, but to be able to understand its protocol, understand how to communicate with it. I could never figure it out, and I was never advanced enough to figure it out. I needed help all the way. Eventually, I just gave up on trying. I knew how to get Train Dispatcher 3 to communicate out, or at least to a handler. So the handler software, then that would be the handler's job to communicate with the external dispatcher protocol. It never worked. Had it worked, I would have had an AI dispatcher. I would have had, all I had to do at that point was get those two to merge. Then my goal was, I just put in all the logic, and logic is easy for me because logic, all logic is random. You can have random number generation, if and else loops, and statements, or statements, you name it. That's all logic. And when you put in a flow, like back in the day, you do flow charts for systems design. I have the flow chart templates. You have a triangle. If it goes one way, it goes the other way. It's kind of, I can't explain it by talking about it, but I can take apart a systems diagram and explain the logic of an entire system, which is somewhat advanced in comparison. This is child's play, except that it's very advanced child's play because it's so powerful that it has so many different parameters and options, and sometimes it's too smart for its own good. For some of the things like Unreal and what it communicates and what it allows you to communicate with, there's only certain things that will communicate with it. There's only certain languages that will work with Unreal. So it's one of those things that once I get something in Unreal, then I have to get into something that's going to be able to program in Unreal. And there's a lot of tutorials out there, thankfully, but it's another learning tree that I'm going to have to conquer at some point. That's if I go the Unreal way. That's if I decide to go with Blender. The good thing about Blender is Blender would allow me, yes, it allows me the 3D style, but I can also use those 3D. I don't have to just use it in Unreal. I can do it in other things as well. So there's other engines out there that I can use if I didn't want to use that, or I think I can use Blender. I don't know about 2D. I don't think I'd go that far, but there's there's a few different ways I can go about doing it. Um, but like I said before, my ultimately what happens with me, and this is why I'm hoping. I don't have much hope for Run 8 until the end, until at least probably this time next year, maybe. And even if it does, I don't know what to expect. They've given little indication as to what to expect. When a little over a year ago, it sounded as if version 3 was coming out at the beginning of this year or the end of last year. It never happened. By the time we found out, the last I heard, it's going to be at least a year away. Version 3 is, as far as I know, has been in development for at least 3 to 4 years. As far as I know, I think version 3 development was almost immediate after version 2, if I recall. they had bigger plans, and I've heard about smaller routes. That's something that I'm definitely interested in. If they come up with a smaller region suddenly, okay, then all of a sudden, you know, suddenly I'm like, okay, I can do that, and then I can develop my whole interest towards that. Just having something you put up on a server, when you might get a couple people that are into it, but put something up on a server when they have more rolling stock, when they have more routes that attach to the routes that you already have, and tell them, okay, but you're only going to model a certain area. Guess what? You're going to get very few, if anybody, interested in doing that. So, but that that's the thing. You get very few people that are interested in doing that kind of thing. So, and that's been the difficult thing, and even at that, I mean, it's I'm doing all right, thank you. But so, anyways, yeah, these, as far as my thought process goes, like I said before, it's much easier for me to fall back on something like Run 8 because it's fun. It's much easier for me, if I can, to fall forward or fall into something like Train Sim World, or even, honestly, it's sometimes much easier for me to suddenly find another program like Stormworks. Kerbal Space Program is my son and I's. As long as my son's interested in that, he's into subsistence as well. As long as we're into those things, then we're going to fall back. Those are going to be just stuff that him and I do. But the stuff that I do on my own, I tend to not use the same programs. I tend to want to find my own. So I would much rather be creative if I can. Of course. Give me a second, guys. Sorry about that. That's my little pager from upstairs. Okay, so, anyways, I lost my train of thought. But, yeah. What was I saying? So yeah, I'll fall back on something very easily, but I would much rather be creative if I can. The problem with that is I need to be confident in what I'm doing. So the good part is I'm reaching out in a lot of different ways right now. I'm still looking for different pieces of software too. If it's not train simulation, I might just fall into something else again. I could, Stormworks was caught my eye for a little while, but it's still under development. It's under some very heavy development, but Stormworks has a tendency, you get into something and all of a sudden, because they keep changing the game around, suddenly your creations don't work anymore, or the creations that people have created that you enjoy suddenly don't work anymore because they've changed the physics. So it's totally under development, constant development, and they put warnings in there because it ticks a lot of people off, and it kind of dismayed me from trying to continue doing certain things in it because I wasn't very creative in it. I tended to use other people's creations. Um, but that was something that I was in there for a while, and yeah, I haven't used it for a while, but I enjoyed it. It was enjoyable if it would stay stable and they quit updating. I mean, it's amazing. I was like, this is a piece of software where it's just like, okay, stop updating the software, so let people create their things so that I can get into this a little bit, but it's still under development. So they're changing the physics, they're changing the rules, they're changing all kinds of things. Freight Yard Manager, I mean, that was something I was into a long time ago. I kind of peeked at it again. I'm not interested. Best railroad simulator out there. It's not the best train simulator. It's the best railroad simulator, in my opinion. That being said, it's got its flaws. Everything I've seen it has a lot of room for potential when it comes to railroads simulations. Um, the eye candy is very captivating in Train Sim World. It really, really draws you in immersive. But here's the thing: in a couple of days, the Oakville sub is going to come out, and when that comes out, it's not going to take long for the YouTube videos to start hitting, and people are going to start doing activities or the various activities, and I will certainly watch them just for entertainment purposes only. Which is kind of ironic because I'm going to be watching the things that, if I do get it, I'm going to wind up doing myself, and I'm going to know everything that happens. So it's kind of like it's kind of like reading a story ahead of time that you're going to eventually decide to borrow or buy, that you already know what the outcomes are. So it's really bizarre in that aspect. Microsoft Train Simulator, that was a totally different ball of wax because, number one, back then there wasn't YouTube was, I don't think it existed that I recall, not back when I was in it. So Microsoft Train Simulator, you just basically, you bought as, or no, you downloaded, or very seldomly would buy routes and add-on packs and reskins and whatever else there was out there, and as many activities that you could put on your hard drive. But once you did that activity, it was over. Then you had activity generator, you had activity changer. Those are things that I was using. But eventually, it was just mixing up the order. It didn't guarantee that AIs were going to work right. They work much better when they have their own paths. You try putting them on counter paths, sometimes you can have disastrous results. So, and that became not only that, but it just became it became too random. There's such a thing as too random. There's a balance between having something that's too random and something that is too structured. What I find is good, for example, is a typical railroad would have the structure of train numbers, a typical call schedule. The randomness is, and the structure would also be what industries typically, like what cars are typically on those trains, perhaps the blocking, perhaps general demand, the time of day you would normally run, how long it normally takes. The randomness that comes into play is it running a little late? Is the crew from the night before requiring rest 8 hours so that it ends up throwing off the start time of the new service? Is a connecting service or switching or anything like that causing a delay? There's all kinds of random factors that can go in, despite the fact that it's structured. Those are the kind of things I like. I like the structure, but the randomness, yes, I like, but I don't like the randomness where it's too random, where it's just what I like to call, in Run 8, for example, the bingo ball machine, where it just decides, I got 40 train symbols, I'm going to put them in. Well, normally you pick one out, and then you got 39 to go. And for whatever reason, Run 8 just throws it right back in. So, and their random number generator's screwed anyways, and it has been for a long time. But it's like yelling at a brick wall because nobody's listening. They don't give a rat's ass about what I'm saying as far as a random number generator. The random number generator sucks. It doesn't work properly. And I've proven it time and time again. It's sequential. It's not true randomization. I mean, nothing is really true randomization when it comes to computers. It's all 0 and 1s and timers. But there's ways to manipulate the timers so that you get a true random number. And this is the kind of things that I'm an expert in. I know these things. It's basic computers. It's so basic, and it's so very basic to me because I do actually know how the computers work. It's not a question. I have the background. I have the IT background. I have all that other stuff. I know what a byte is. I know what a bit is. I know, and then everything from there, like gigabytes and megabytes, gigabytes, yeah, blah 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 blah. We didn't even go that far back then because we didn't have the storage. So, I mean, back then it's just 1 bit, 8 to the power of 8, 256, blah blah blah. It makes sense. It makes total sense from a logical standpoint of understanding how a computer works for me because it's very simple. A computer in its total form is nothing more than a expensive calculator. I shouldn't say it's a calculator, but it's also has all the elements of your basic integrated circuits. So you go to what used to be Radio Shack. I don't think they have those anymore, but whatever the hell they call them now. Canada and US are different. Who knows? The source is in Canada, but anyways. Back then, I could go to a Radio Shack if I was doing a circuit for a model railroad. I could do CTC. The signal logic. Any 555 timer is an integrated circuit. But then you could pick up the any 555 timer would allow you. It was a timing chip, and it did all kinds of things. That can involve signal logic for model railroad, but then you deal with AND chips, OR chips, NOR, NAND. I'm like, NOR, NAND, what the hell is all that? Not OR, not AND. So if two things were not, you have NOR. It's totally logic. It sounds goofy. I mean, a lot of things like, what the hell are you talking about? But it's all logic. It's the same logic that's built into any programming language. Every programming language out there has it. Whether it's BASIC, C, they all have them. They just word them differently, but they all do the same thing. Where it gets complicated is how powerful these languages are and how to take advantage of it. Sometimes the more powerful they are, the steeper the learning curve, because then you have to learn how it's manipulating it. Whereas if it's basic and it's powerful enough to dig in deep, problem is with computers, you're not dealing with a Commodore 64 system, you're dealing with the operating system that plays with different peripherals and all kinds of things that you can attach to it that does all kinds of different things. So it's crazy how computers have changed. Back with the Commodore 64, all you had to do is you would open up a file, you would input, you would print number 1, send it over to the file. You can open up 2 for communication with the modem. You can send it to that, receive from that input number 1. So you're opening and closing files, which is basically you're opening and closing files, but you're opening and closing gateways, in essence. So maybe if we had maybe we had railroad people doing the logic, the trains would run more. Yeah, well, I'm not a railroad person. Run 8, for example, Run 8's done a very good job at getting the physics down. I've heard people been critical about it, but truth is, there's nothing that comes even close to what Run 8 can do with the physics of the trains. And that being said, I've been willing to sacrifice those physics for something that is less physics, perhaps a little more eye candy, although that's not essential, but just some type of more operation minded. One thing I don't think Run 8 has a grasp on is operations. I don't believe I mean they have the I mean if you look at the loads and empties, there's a perfect example. Loads and empties. When they load a car, and they used to be a random button with version 1, I think it was. Version 2, and you can still load it with different variants, but when it actually loads an industry, it loads a car to its absolute full capacity, which is why the intermodals need DPUs. Then you take a look at trains that are AI trains that are running on Tehachapi. First of all, it's illegal to have 4 engines running going up the grade. So any AI train you have, and if it's a low enough, if it's a low enough HPT, the lowest value you have, where it's just barely making 2.2 or 2.3, 2.4, and it's coming up from Mojave, and it's an AI train that started out by an AI train that started, say, West Colton or somewhere out there, wherever the hell it spawns or comes into play. Say, let's assuming it's a spawn train, not a built train, and they spawn with 4 engines because they need so much power on some of those trains because there's so much tonnage on the loaded cars. And the way they do the cars, it's it has to be so many cars, and it's kind of it's interesting how they do their way bills. Let's put it that way. But then you deal with the cars, and then you deal with, okay, you got 4 engines running. Well, first of all, you're not supposed to have 4 engines running on the head end. It specifically says that in the timetable. You're not supposed to have 4 engines running, yet the AI does it. And it's been pointed out, a lot of the railroad people that they count on or that they hang out with or still love the product have pointed that out. So why is it still there? And that's, how can you expect a player to take over a service which is probably going to kill a coupler going up? So I mean, that's just a classic example, and that's not even going so far as to having a train that's okay. Ideally, yeah, you like to have loads on the front and empties on the back. Well, guess what? That's not how. That might be ideally the ideal circumstances for a train to be built, is to put the loads on the front and the empties on the back. That's not always the way it's built, though. A lot of times, especially if a train has work in between or it's picked up work on the way, that gets totally mixed up. And when you look at the way Conrail ran, or even CSX for that matter, they run totally different. They run in blocks. So does Canadian Pacific. Canadian Pacific has blocking. So when they set up their trains, not only do they set up long haul routes with multiple service locations, they block their trains into about 4, 5, 6 segments coming out of their humps. And so when they're assembled, they're ready to go. They have it all assembled into blocks. You cannot put loads on the front and empties on the back and have 5, 6 blocks. That was the first time when I did Selkirk and I tried to do the blocking, and I noticed how the blocking worked for Selkirk, and I had some good prototype data on it too, because I was starting to get into the Conrail side of things. I don't know where I had that information from, but I had a lot of information on Selkirk, and the I had all the blocks and everything. I forget where the hell I had that information from too, but I had it. It's been so long since I tried it, but oh my god, when I had that information. But yeah, oh no, I understand that, Tim. But to have that information, it was great, and I had more information for Waycross and stuff like that. So I did the research, and I was able to get plenty of information, but I can never get Run8 to do it the way the program was. I can never get it to do exactly the way it was within their car system. So of course, the thing a lot of people were looking for, not a lot of people, but a few people were looking for me, who liked RTS, for version 1, they were saying, well, if you just create RTS 2, then it solves it. Yes and no. Yes, it solves it as far as building the trains, but then you take away the ability to have the trains just pop up, because of how the spawning system works. You have to call every train, so you need a train master to do that. And I never wanted to be a train master. I wanted to be running my train and not worry about the trains. But yeah, it's possible. I mean, yeah, I could have done it, and there was some hurdles. It was difficult to figure out. The blocks were getting smaller, they were more precise. It was getting more difficult to try to pinpoint blocks. And I believe, as far as I know, there's still somebody who is working on an RTS type program with my blessings. If he gets it out, great. Then all of a sudden you got something, and his has a much better user interface. So the potential is there, but an RTS type software is not going to make Run8 any better, really. As far as I'm concerned, it won't. There's just too much that's missing at the core of Run8, and that is the inherent problem that I spoke to before, and that is there's not enough people or AI to run those entire worlds and those entire regions. You need a smaller region. And of course, the counter argument to that, to me, has always been, well, why don't you just pick a region or run a smaller segment? Well, my counter to that was, well, number one, the spawn points. Well, then they created some more spawn points. Okay, they created more spawn points, so we had Bakersfield covered pretty good, but then what about Mojave? What if I wanted to run for Mojave, which had less industries, which was kind of tempting at one time? And when you think about it, you got enough spawn points coming out northbound, but where's the southbound spawn point? Well, the nearest southbound spawn point for Mojave, you got to go all the way up to Bakersfield, so you have to run the entire route. And I didn't want to run the entire, as much as I liked running the pass and all, I didn't necessarily want to run the entire pass. Actually, the Northeast has some of the best spawn points. Actually, so not only does the North, I don't know why California doesn't have as many, but Northeast has it, and I believe the Southeast has a fair amount as well, although not as many as the Northeast. Mikey put in a lot of spawn points, which was good, because that was always one that you were able to have an isolated area. And believe me, and the thought has crossed my mind today. I've thought about that, and I thought, I just might go back into the Northeast, despite the fact that Smiley's got a server. I've thought about just doing a single player and doing my own thing my own way in the Northeast, because I thought about it a little bit, and I thought, well, maybe I can make something that'll keep me interested. And right away, I can tell you from personal experience, whether it's procrastination, whether it's just I want to have fun, whether I just want to bide some time or develop something that I truly do like. It's much easier for me to go back into it and try to make something out of limited how would you say, limited capabilities, but yet still make something out of it, because I know how to manipulate Run 8. I know how to I don't mean Run 8 as a team or anything like that. I know how to manipulate the software enough to get it to do what I want, and that's the cool thing. When you look at TSW, I have no idea how I'm going to be able to manipulate it. So you look at TSW now, I hear you can do things. The majority of people are saying, no, you can't. And some of these people are people who are still really into it. For Train Sim World, this is what I've basically been told, or basically have seen. And this is from people that I know, who I communicate on a regular basis, who still run it on a regular basis. This is from research, and they seem to all concur, with the exception of a couple people who are telling, or I shouldn't say a couple people, there's just one person is telling me that there's something different. Maybe there's a second person who I haven't met yet. But TSW, as far as I can tell right now, can only run, it does not have it doesn't have rail driver support, which is not the end of the world. I could care less. I mean, yes, I have it here, but it's not a big deal. That's not a game killer for me. I mean, I like my rail driver, but it's okay. What is the killer for me, at least at this point, is the lack of randomness available. There's no randomness. Everything is the same. So if you do your 24-hour thing, you can change the time of day, you can change the season, you can use whatever service. You don't have to use the services they say you do too. You can just pick up one engine even if it's assigned for another project, and you want to. I think you can just go ahead and take it. You can take the cars that might be assigned for a different train, and then you can go and do. So there's a lot you can manipulate with. The problem is, let's say, for example, and I don't know how it exactly works. So a train is going to drop off cars at so-and-so yard at such and such time every 24 hours, or maybe 4 trains is going to drop off some, or something like that. And they're going to be always the same cars, and the train is always going to look the same. It's going to be the same service, same cars, blah blah blah. So it drops off those cars, and then they become part of the world, or something like that. I don't know of any of these AI trains that are able to pick up new cars. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. I haven't really got a clear explanation onto that. But the cars themselves don't add into the game, or they don't increase into the game, so that you end up with a huge pool. let's say. So let's say you have a huge pool and you're filling up your yard with a bunch of stuff. Not only when you do, the reason why, from what I understand, is they've limited the number of cars in these yards is because of the frame hit and the resource hit. That's a concern because no, I do not want to turn my computer into a monster gaming computer just for the sake of beautiful graphics. And yeah, the eye candy is great and all, but uh, I'm not ready to turn my machine into some mega gaming machine. It's not worth me having a gaming machine or changing everything over just to please my senses of something that looks pretty, unless it runs solid as a rock, and it's got to run solid as a rock. I'm much more, I remember the days of Microsoft Train Simulator when I didn't have a video card at the time. This was prior. I mean, the Microsoft Train Simulator I can run easily on my video card today. But back in the day, I had older video cards running Microsoft Train Simulator on older computers. And I know what it's like when you start filling a yard with a lot of different types of cars. And it can really bog a system down. So I just, you know, there's only so much I can push TSW, and it seems like you're really limited to running activity based systems or running a schedule for 24 hours and trying different jobs on those 24 hours. But once you've tried all those jobs in a given world, that's it. Now, if you had different days, maybe you have a multiple different days, that'd be great. Or if you had editors and sharing, and they've talked about editors coming out, but none of that, from what I understand, has happened yet. So it's something that pie in the sky. Maybe it's happening now. Maybe it's in maybe it's in some beta branch of some sort, or some, there's some testing going on, and there's actually things that are able, if you want to go into an experimental branch, let's say, if it exists. I don't know. Maybe that's what the references are, that there's some type of experimental branch out there where certain features are able to do things right now. Yeah, okay. I'm not too big on experimental branches if that's the case, but I'd much rather be on a stable branch, but that's been tested, because I don't feel like being the beta tester. But this is where, like I said, this is where I go back to Run 8, and Run 8 is my comfort zone because I've dealt with it for so long. I know how to manipulate it. I know how to deal with it. But ideally, just being in your comfort zone is probably detrimental to. It's like running your head against. Basically, it's like running a head against your wall. Just because something's comfortable doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And I think my gut is telling me that I need to get out of my comfort zone. I need to keep pushing my horizons further. I have to keep on challenging myself as much as I possibly can. And it's all going to come to a head in 3 months, one way or another. If I don't start challenging myself soon, 3 months from now, I am going to either be in a situation where I'm just bored to hell for 2 weeks and I just sleep most of the time, or end up going on road trips all over the place just to try to keep my mind off of being by myself for 2 weeks. Or I face those demons and actually get something accomplished. So, and that's what I'm up against. So that's why the uncertainty's here with me right now. This is why the channel. This is why sometimes I start doing something and then I quit it. And I'm not the only one that does this too. There's others. There's others in the Run 8 community who I'm with who start and stop. Some can't even be bothered with the computers right now, but they have access to doing things outdoors and doing different other things. For me personally, I don't have that much access. I'm working during the day, so I mean, daylight savings time's coming pretty soon. The weather's going to get better, so who knows? But anyways, I'm just rambling now, so I'm going to end it. So yeah, thanks for joining. Hopefully that makes some sense as far as where I'm at. Like I said, I'm open to whatever. I'll be keeping an eye on Train Sim World. I wish them nothing but the best. And ditto with Run 8. And anybody else. Derail Valley is something I may have to take a look at again. I think I've seen, yeah, I was into that for a little bit there, so I might take a quick look tomorrow, possibly, at it again. But, and then I might take a look at Run 8 as well, see what's going on, different things. But Wednesdays where things turn around for me for the rest of the week, because that's, literally it is the hump day, because what happens with me is the amount of time I see my son changes. As of Wednesdays, is the day where things start turning around. Even though I saw him for 4 hours tonight. Sunday and Monday's the tough days. Tuesday's not so bad. Wednesday, is pretty much the same, and then once Thursday and Friday comes along, it's just full mode. Basically, spend most of my time with him, basically, until it all starts again on Sunday. So, anyways, yeah, no problem. Hey, Quincy. Anyways, I'm just taking off now. Um, so that's all I gotta say for all that. So, like I said, I see Quincy just coming in here. The bottom line is I'm open to whatever. If they got something great, let's see it. And links, if there's some streams out there that I should be watching, or anybody's live streams or people or whatever, send me the links. Post on my forum if you can, because I had a hard time posting today. And yeah, I'll keep my mind open, and if there's something good that's coming along, then I'll certainly consider it down the road. But I'm still open to what Run 8's doing. I'm open to whatever else comes along as well, and then I'm just going to keep on trying to develop my own confidence into building something for myself, and just take care of myself, and basically get into Blender like I was going to do, and that might get me on my own little path to doing something a little bit different. So, but anyways, that's it for now, guys. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later.